Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And as advertised, our first guest today here in segment one is the Fox News channels and Fox News Radio's Brian Kilmeade, here to talk about his new paperback coming out today. Brian Kilmeade, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me on, Brian. I appreciate it.
Well, the new book, and he's written several, is Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans. Guess you're all excited about the paperback version coming out today, Brian Kilmeade.
Yeah, what I did is, since Andrew Jackson, even though he's, passed away before the Civil War, is now a point of interest. Sadly, his grave was defiled for the first time since his death about 6 months ago. And then we have President Trump saying, he's my guy, I'm going to put his portrait in the White House. We have President Obama saying, I'm going to take him off the 20. And all of a sudden, he seems to be at the point of contact with a lot of people in history who want to take his statue down because of decisions they didn't agree with, and the fact that he, like almost everyone in his time and the first 10 presidents, had slaves. No one could ever justify slavery. No one could justify the Trail of Tears. But he did so much good, and he was such an American success story, from a orphan kid at 13 to a two-term president to a militia general. I thought I just want to grab one aspect of his life that was really determinative of the America we are in right now, and that was the Battle of New Orleans. If the British had won, they would have stopped us from growing past the Mississippi, wouldn't have had Manifest Destiny. And all my research revealed that that's not an overstatement. So the book did well, and in the aftermath, I did put an afterword, and in the afterword, I looked at what other presidents thought of Andrew Jackson.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, about what they said?
Oh, yeah, thanks for the question. I want to get Democrats and Republicans to get their own personal politics out of today, and just look at this guy in whole. When he left office, he was the last president to have a surplus. He balanced the budget. When he got elected, he didn't get elected because he was just a war hero. He wanted to campaign to the people. They hated him in Washington, Virginia, Philadelphia, Boston, and New York. They hated him. They thought he was a backwoodsman, too crude to be president. Does that sound familiar?
That's my next question, but keep going.
Yeah, we have FDR, who said, the more I study Andrew Jackson, the more I love Andrew Jackson. We had Teddy Roosevelt who wrote a book on Jackson, said there was one military genius in the War of 1812. It was Andrew Jackson. We had Abraham Lincoln use some excerpts in his second inaugural from Andrew Jackson's life, who studied how Andrew Jackson handled the secession application by South Carolina. He said, I'm going to send in troops to make sure the Union stays together. That's exactly what Lincoln ended up doing. And then you have Harry Truman, his biggest fan. He kept a figurine of Jackson on his desk. He said Jackson reminded him of his dad, and he has a statue of Jackson in front of the Truman Library. So if you don't like me, or you don't like Trump, or you're a Republican, well, then you got to disagree with Ronald Reagan, Abraham Lincoln, and Teddy Roosevelt. If you're a Democrat and you don't like him, he's the first Democratic president, then you have to disagree with FDR and Harry Truman. And that's why I put that in the end.
What do you think of the comparisons of Donald Trump and Andrew Jackson? Some of the comparisons are compliments to Trump. Some of them are insults to both Trump and Jackson. What do you make of those?
There's a lot of similarities. I mean, basically, the difference is one was a war hero, one wasn't. One was born of meager means, one had plenty of means. But what you had when they entered office, they were both rich. They were both disrupted by Washington. So in turn, they brought their families to key positions. Does that sound familiar? Jackson was ridiculed for that. They both were hated by their predecessors and disrespected, John Quincy Adams and Barack Obama. And maybe it was justified, maybe it wasn't. They didn't think they were worthy of it. Both had to bring their case to the people, and in Jackson's case was the first to campaign. I would say that if anybody defined themselves and how they campaign, it has to be the guy that's campaigning right now, and that's Donald Trump. And there's a lot. I mean, his brusque way of approaching America first, was very similar to what Jackson did. And they both live and bled red, white, and blue. So those are some of the things. And both, when they entered office, were very rich. So, and they both like to mentor other people, and they both consolidated power well. And you're seeing that. Donald Trump, whether he gets 4 or 8 years, has a lot of power in the Republican Party. His approval rating is now 47%. but he's willing to do things that are unpopular that he thinks are right.
Talking to Brian Kilmeade here in segment 1. Some of the reviews that are read about it, written about it. The reader gets an inkling of the grit that made America great. Kilmeade shows how the patriotism of Jackson and his generation made America great in the first place. A terrific read. Brian Kilmeade, how did you get writing these books? These are amazing.
I just love it. And, I mean, the research, which people find tedious and arduous, I think that's the most exciting. And, you know, with George Washington's Secret Six, I studied that for 18 years just because I just love history. That's what I do to get away from politics and sports. So when I realized there was so much more to be told on that and was able to bring that forward, I thought that was one and out. And then when I was able to see and try to discover things in other great presidents that didn't get enough attention, I found Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates. And then I've always been fascinated by the War of 1812, and my first stop was the Battle of Baltimore. We were having a big debate, and we still are, about the national anthem, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to talk about the burning of Washington and how we stood up and reversed the course of the war with this miraculous stand with Fort McHenry in the Battle of Baltimore, Francis Scott Key. And I said, I have enough elements here. And then my publisher just said, before you commit, check out New Orleans. And I said, the battle, it was a great win for us, but you know what? They didn't have to fight the battle, and I'll be fighting that every time I go to promote the book. And they said, read about it. And after a few months, it became abundantly clear, not only did we have to fight it, we had to win it, or the country wouldn't look the same. So that type stuff, to me, I find endlessly exciting.
Brian, you've written about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and now Andrew Jackson. Do you have a favorite out of those three?
Well, I mean, Washington is so great. I have trouble ranking anybody above it. But the thing that Andrew Jackson is so complex, and every time I feel I have a handle on him, someone tells me something I had no idea about. And I'm so into Jackson, they asked me to join the Board of Trustees, and I did. So I'm now on the Board of Trustees of the Hermitage because they like the book. They think that it helped tell the story. Number two is I feel like there's so much more to know, and they saw how many questions I was asking, and they said, why don't you join our board? Because obviously, so I guess right now it would be Jackson, but now I'm also dove into Sam Houston, Avenging the Alamo, and the whole how Texas came into the fray into our country, and I'm caught up in that. Sam Houston really learned how to fight underneath Jackson and learned how to be a politician because of Jackson, so it does seem like a natural continuation. But if I was to make a ranking, Brian, it would be probably Jackson right now.
Brian Kilmeade, do you have a second to talk current events?
Yep.
Okay. There's so many things going on in the news. There's the caravan. There's the aftermath of Khashoggi. What do you make of all the latest news going on?
Number one, Khashoggi looks like he was brutally murdered. Okay? And there's no question Saudis did it. I am just really, really suspicious of the Turks coming out the good guys, because I don't believe they are. It's a horrible regime. They showed up at the United Nations. No one even gave them the time of day. They've jailed journalists. They've jailed anyone that might be an opposition. The guy that ran against Erdogan had to run from prison because he was arrested. And now they are as the Saudis and Americans deepened their relationship, the Turks fell down. Their economy is about to fall apart. They had everything to gain about having this happen. And I just wonder how this whole thing was so well recorded and how it was videotaped and how we get now all these details. And I just say, yeah, they're guilty, and I think our relationship should be affected, but I don't think they should be destroyed. And there's something else here. And now all of a sudden I've noticed Democrats and some Republicans feel as though this is their stand. This is their last stand. They have to suddenly rein in the Saudis. Really? This horrible regime that gave 13 hijackers on 9/11, now we have to rein them in? The ones who were patient enough to sit back and step back under President Obama, now we have to rein them in? If there's a Middle East regime outside the Israelis, that, and Jordan, I'm a fan of their king over there, but still, we're still talking about a king. Please tell me what that great government is. And for just pure self-interest reasons, we cannot destroy our relationship there. So people should just keep that in check.
Brian Kilmeade, want to get back to the book here for the last minute of our interview here. I know you're busy and have to get going soon. Andrew Jackson, Miracle of New Orleans, now out in paperback. How should people get it?
If you go to briankilmeade.com, you can get it personalized. Go anywhere else, Amazon. It's going to be out. It's out today. It's kind of exciting, number one. And number two is if you check out my tour dates, I'm really going to go every weekend outside Thanksgiving up until the week before Christmas. So hopefully I'm coming to, you'll be able to catch up to me at some point. And number three is I wrote a column on foxnews.com. Check it out. It's the war on history that we're experiencing. You know, whether it's Jefferson statue's got to come down or Robert E. Lee. I touched on that subject, and I hope you like and it's pretty much what I've experienced since I started writing this history books.
Brian Kilmeade, author, talk show host, most recent book, Andrew Jackson, Miracle of New Orleans. Brian Kilmeade, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's always great having you on our station.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be on. We get such great feedback, and thanks so much, Brian.